The movie begins by showing the creation of 19 incredibly powerful rings. These magical rings possess immense power and are destined to shape the future of Middle-earth. Among the 19 rings, 3 are given to the elves, who are immortal, wise, and noble beings. These rings enhance their strength and wisdom while preserving their kingdoms. 7 rings are given to the dwarves, who live deep within the mountains and are known as the greatest craftsmen in the world. Their rings grant them wealth and influence, making their kingdoms even more prosperous. The remaining 9 rings are given to humans, the race that desires power more than any other. These rings are extremely powerful, and whoever possesses them gains tremendous authority. Each bearer is expected to guard their ring carefully. However, the creation of the rings is not yet complete. In secret, through deception and betrayal, one final ring is forged. The Dark Lord Sauron secretly creates the One Ring, a ring far more powerful than all the others combined. With this single ring, he intends to control the bearers of every other ring and conquer all of Middle-earth. A massive war soon breaks out at Mordor, where humans and elves unite to fight against the Dark Lord's terrifying army. Although the Alliance initially manages to hold back Sauron's forces, the Dark Lord's army proves to be overwhelmingly powerful and nearly impossible to defeat. During the final battle, the son of the king manages to cut off Sauron's finger, separating him from the One Ring. As soon as the ring is removed, Sauron's physical body is destroyed. He transforms into a spirit and vanishes, while his armies are scattered across the land. Unfortunately, the One Ring immediately begins corrupting the king's son. Instead of destroying it while he has the chance, he decides to keep it for himself. The ring's evil influence eventually leads to his death when he is ambushed and killed. The One Ring slips into the river, where it remains hidden for many years. For nearly 25 centuries, the ring lies forgotten beneath the water until one day it is discovered by a strange creature named Gollum. Gollum becomes completely consumed by the ring's power and keeps it in his possession for almost 500 years, allowing it to slowly corrupt both his body and mind. Eventually, Gollum loses the ring by accident, and it is discovered by a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, who unknowingly takes it home without knowing anything about its terrifying history. 60 years later, Bilbo celebrates his 111th birthday with a grand party attended by the people of the Shire. His old friend Gandalf also arrives to celebrate the occasion. During the celebration, Bilbo announces that he has decided to leave the Shire and go on one final adventure. Meanwhile, Gandalf already knows that Bilbo possesses the mysterious ring that once belonged to the Dark Lord. Before leaving, Bilbo reluctantly leaves the ring behind for his nephew, Frodo Baggins, and sets off on his journey. After Bilbo departs, Frodo inherits the ring, while Gandalf leaves the Shire to uncover the complete truth about its history. During his investigation, Gandalf discovers that the servants of the Dark Lord have already captured Gollum. After being brutally tortured, Gollum reveals only 2 important words: Shire and Baggins. The moment Gandalf learns this shocking information, he immediately rushes back to warn Frodo. Realizing that Frodo is now in grave danger, Gandalf instructs him to leave the Shire immediately and travel to the village of Bree, where they are supposed to meet again. While Frodo begins his journey, Gandalf visits Saruman, believing that the powerful wizard will help them against the Dark Lord. However, Gandalf is horrified to discover that Saruman himself has been corrupted. He has secretly allied himself with Sauron and joined the forces of darkness. Saruman reveals that Sauron has already sent his deadliest servants, the Nazgul, to hunt down Frodo, recover the One Ring, and kill anyone who stands in their way. Saruman then offers Gandalf the opportunity to join the Dark Lord's side and rule alongside him. When Gandalf refuses the offer, an intense magical battle breaks out between the 2 powerful wizards. Despite fighting with all his strength, Gandalf is unable to defeat Saruman. Saruman eventually overpowers him, captures him using powerful magic, and imprisons him at the top of his tower. Meanwhile, Frodo continues his journey with his loyal friend Samwise, and along the way they are joined by 2 more hobbits, Merry and Pippin. As they travel through the forest, one of the terrifying Nazgul suddenly appears nearby. Frodo and his companions quickly hide beneath the roots of a large tree, hoping to avoid being discovered. As the Nazgul draws closer, the One Ring begins influencing Frodo's mind. Unable to resist its temptation, he slowly reaches for the ring and puts it on. Fortunately, Sam distracts the Nazgul at the last moment, preventing Frodo from being discovered immediately. Even so, the Nazgul continue searching and eventually locate the hobbits later that night. The 4 hobbits narrowly escape and manage to cross a river aboard a small boat. Frodo is briefly left behind but quickly jumps into the boat just in time, allowing all of them to escape safely while leaving the Nazgul behind. Eventually, they arrive at the village of Bree, only to discover that Gandalf has been missing for 6 months and has never arrived as planned. Unsure of what to do next, Frodo and his companions sit inside the inn, wondering how they should continue their journey. While waiting, Frodo once again falls under the influence of the One Ring. As he struggles to control himself, the ring accidentally slips onto his finger. The moment the ring is on his hand, Frodo disappears from sight. Because he has worn the ring, the Nazgul immediately sense his exact location. Frodo is overwhelmed with fear, and after removing the ring, he barely manages to escape. A mysterious ranger named Strider approaches Frodo and offers to help him. He explains that waiting any longer for Gandalf is no longer an option. According to Strider, the Dark Lord's servants are closing in, and they will stop at nothing until they recover the One Ring. Before the Nazgul can attack again, Strider secretly leads Frodo and his companions away from the village and hides them safely. He explains that the Nazgul are the Dark Lord's most feared servants and that they will continue hunting Frodo relentlessly until they recover the ring. Strider then leads the hobbits toward Rivendell, believing it is the only place where they may still find safety. That night, the group camps on top of a mountain to rest before continuing their dangerous journey. Before leaving to scout the surrounding area, Strider hands each of them a blade for protection. While Frodo sleeps peacefully, the remaining hobbits gather firewood and light a campfire, unaware that even greater dangers are waiting for them ahead. The flames suddenly rise, and with them the Dark Lord's terrifying army appears. The attack begins without warning, forcing the hobbits to scatter in fear as the enemy surrounds them. The Nazgul continue searching for the One Ring, and Frodo, confused and overwhelmed by its influence, instinctively reaches for it and puts it on. The moment Frodo wears the ring, the Nazgul immediately sense his exact location and close in on him. The leader of the Nazgul approaches Frodo, and while he is still wearing the ring, stabs him with a cursed blade, leaving him gravely wounded. Just then, Strider arrives and fearlessly charges into battle against the Nazgul to protect Frodo and the others. With nothing but his sword and courage, Strider fights the ring wraiths, driving them back and forcing them to retreat from the battlefield. After escaping the attack, Strider continues leading the wounded Frodo towards safety. At the same time, the story shifts to Saruman, who has fully joined the Dark Lord's forces and has begun forging massive weapons and preparing an army for the coming war. Meanwhile, we are introduced to Arwen, a beautiful elven princess who is also Strider's beloved. Arwen finds Strider and the wounded Frodo just in time. Realizing that Frodo's condition is rapidly worsening, she places him on her horse and rides toward Rivendell as quickly as possible. The Nazgul chase Arwen relentlessly, but she refuses to slow down and races across the river to escape them. Once she reaches the opposite side, Arwen uses powerful elven magic. Her spell summons enormous waves that crash into the river, sweeping away the Nazgul and their horses with overwhelming force. After successfully driving the ringwraiths away, Arwen safely brings Frodo to Rivendell. There, Arwen's father, Lord Elrond, uses his healing abilities to save Frodo's life. Sometime later, Frodo regains consciousness and is relieved to find Gandalf standing beside him. Gandalf explains that he escaped Saruman's prison after being rescued by a gigantic eagle sent by his allies. While recovering in Rivendell, Frodo reunites with Bilbo Baggins. Frodo tells Bilbo that he does not believe he is capable of completing a journey as great as the one Bilbo once accomplished. Frodo even wishes to return home, believing that the ring would be much safer if it remained hidden in the Shire. Soon afterward, Elrond calls together a great council in Rivendell. Representatives of the elves, humans, and dwarves gather to decide the fate of the One Ring. Gandalf argues that the only way to save Middle-earth is to destroy the ring before Sauron regains it. However, Elrond has little faith in mankind. He reminds everyone that Isildur, the king who defeated Sauron, failed to destroy the ring when he had the chance because he was corrupted by its power. The story then shifts to Strider, who meets Arwen once again in Rivendell. It is revealed that Strider's true name is Aragorn and that he is the rightful heir to the throne of Gondor. However, because he fears repeating Isildur's mistakes, he has avoided claiming his destiny as king. Arwen then gives Aragorn her magical Evenstar necklace, symbolizing her love for him and her decision to give up her immortal elven life. By making this choice, Arwen accepts mortality so that she can one day live and grow old beside Aragorn as a human. Back at the council meeting, none of the humans, dwarves, or elves are willing to carry the One Ring into Mordor because they all believe such a mission is certain death. During the meeting, Aragorn's true identity as the rightful king of Gondor becomes known to everyone present. Seeing that no one else is willing to take responsibility, Frodo courageously volunteers to carry the One Ring into Mordor and destroy it. Inspired by Frodo's bravery, representatives of humans, dwarves, and elves all step forward, promising to accompany him and protect him throughout the dangerous journey. Before Frodo leaves Rivendell, Bilbo gives him his treasured sword, Sting, along with a coat of mithril chainmail, an incredibly rare armor woven from an almost indestructible metal. Frodo then begins the long journey toward Mordor with Samwise, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Merry, and Pippin forming what becomes known as the Fellowship of the Ring. As they travel through the wilderness, Saruman secretly watches their every move using flocks of spying birds under his control. To avoid being discovered, the Fellowship changes its planned route and attempts to cross the snowy mountain pass instead. However, Saruman uses his powerful magic to unleash a violent snowstorm, causing massive avalanches that make the mountain impossible to cross. With no other choice, the Fellowship decides to travel beneath the mountains through the ancient mines of Moria. Once inside, they discover the horrifying truth that every dwarf who once lived there has been slaughtered. While exploring the mines, a monstrous creature suddenly rises from the dark water and grabs Frodo with one of its enormous tentacles. At first, Frodo's hobbit friends desperately try to pull him free, and moments later Aragorn and the rest of the Fellowship join the battle against the enormous creature. Working together, they fight the monster with swords, arrows, and axes until they finally manage to rescue Frodo before the beast can drag him away or devour him. Inside the mines, Gandalf discovers an old book left behind by the dwarves. After reading its final entries, he realizes that the Dark Lord's creatures have already overrun Moria and are still lurking within its depth. A short time later, one of the skeletons is accidentally knocked into a deep well after colliding with one of the hobbits. The loud crash echoes throughout the mines, alerting the Dark Lord's army to the Fellowship's exact location. Within moments, countless enemies charge toward them. The Fellowship quickly seals the massive doors in an attempt to block their path. Unfortunately, the enemy is far too powerful. They smash through the doors and launch a full assault. The Fellowship stands together and fights bravely, facing overwhelming numbers as they battle the Dark Lord's relentless army. During the battle, a gigantic cave troll suddenly enters the chamber, making the fight even more dangerous. Legolas leaps onto the monster's head and repeatedly shoots arrows at it, but the creature barely seems affected and continues charging toward Frodo. Just as the cave troll prepares to kill Frodo, Aragorn rushes forward in an attempt to stop it. Aragorn fights fiercely against the beast, but the troll overpowers him, throwing him aside before turning its attention back to Frodo. After defeating the surrounding enemies, every member of the Fellowship joins forces to attack the cave troll together. Their combined assault finally brings the enormous creature down, and it collapses lifeless onto the stone floor. The group immediately rushes to Frodo, believing that the troll's spear has killed him. To everyone's surprise, Frodo slowly stands up completely unharmed. They soon realize that Bilbo's mithril chainmail absorbed the deadly blow and saved Frodo's life. Just then, they hear distant footsteps and the sounds of approaching enemies echoing through the mines. As they reach an enormous stone bridge, the Dark Lord's army begins chasing them once again. They continue running forward, only to discover that enemies are now surrounding them from every direction. To their surprise, the creatures suddenly stop attacking and retreat in fear. Gandalf immediately understands the reason and warns everyone that something far more terrifying is approaching. He tells the Fellowship to keep running as a powerful demon emerges from the darkness behind them. The Fellowship races across the dangerous pathways, desperately trying to escape before the demon reaches them. Soon they arrive at a massive gap that can only be crossed by making a long jump. While the Dark Lord's army closes in behind them, each member of the Fellowship successfully leaps across to safety. However, Aragorn and Frodo are left behind for a brief moment. Just as they prepare to jump, the stone beneath their feet suddenly collapses, forcing them to leap at the last possible second before the ground falls away beneath them. Finally, Gandalf stands alone on the narrow bridge and orders the rest of the Fellowship to continue without him, preparing to face the terrifying demon by himself so that the others can escape. Gandalf stands alone on the bridge and faces the terrifying Balrog in an epic battle. Using all of his magical power, he confronts the demon and finally shatters the bridge beneath it. As the Balrog falls into the abyss, it appears that Gandalf has defeated the monstrous creature once and for all. However, just before disappearing into the darkness, the Balrog lashes out with its fiery whip, wrapping it around Gandalf's legs and pulling him off the bridge. Gandalf falls into the abyss alongside the demon. Before disappearing, he tells his companions to continue the journey without him. The Fellowship manages to escape from the mines, but they are completely devastated by Gandalf's sacrifice. Overwhelmed with grief, every member of the Fellowship begins mourning the loss of their friend and guide. It is one of the most emotional moments in the entire journey, as they struggle to accept that Gandalf is gone. After taking some time to recover, the Fellowship continues their journey and eventually reaches the beautiful forest realm of Lothlorien. This enchanted forest is ruled by a powerful elven queen, and before meeting her, the Fellowship is surrounded and captured by the elves guarding the forest. The elves eventually escort them to their ruler, Lady Galadriel, one of the wisest and most powerful beings in Middle-earth. Galadriel speaks privately with Frodo and tells him that he alone has the strength and courage to complete the mission of destroying the One Ring. She also warns him that the power of the ring will eventually tempt someone within the Fellowship and that one of his own companions will attempt to take the ring from him. Meanwhile, the story shifts back to Saruman, who has now gathered a massive and powerful army in preparation for war. Determined to recover the One Ring, Saruman sends his newly created army to hunt down Frodo and the Fellowship before they can reach Mordor. Meanwhile, Frodo and the Fellowship continue traveling by boat as they move farther down the Great River. During one of their stops, Frodo finds himself alone for a short time. Taking advantage of the situation, Boromir approaches him. Just as Galadriel had predicted, Boromir becomes consumed by the temptation of the One Ring and desperately tries to convince Frodo to hand it over. When Frodo refuses, Boromir attempts to seize the ring by force. In panic, Frodo puts on the One Ring and immediately disappears from sight, escaping Boromir's grasp. After removing the ring, Frodo finds himself alone in another part of the forest, deeply shaken by what has just happened. A short time later, Aragorn finds Frodo. At first, Frodo fears that Aragorn may also be tempted by the ring's power. Instead, Aragorn reassures him, promising that he will protect him no matter what happens and will stand beside him until the One Ring is finally destroyed. Suddenly, Sting, Frodo's magical sword, begins glowing blue. The Fellowship immediately realizes that enemies are approaching and that an attack is about to begin. Aragorn orders Frodo to leave the battlefield and continue towards safety while he stays behind to face the approaching enemy. Without hesitation, Aragorn charges directly into battle against the attacking army. Displaying incredible courage and skill, he fights fiercely with his sword, cutting down enemy after enemy as they continue advancing. Soon the remaining members of the Fellowship join Aragorn in the battle, fighting side by side against the overwhelming enemy forces. Meanwhile, Sam searches desperately for Frodo and urges him to stay hidden. However, Sam soon realizes that Frodo has decided to continue the journey to Mordor alone because he believes the ring is too dangerous for anyone else to carry. As the others keep the enemy occupied, Frodo quietly escapes from the battlefield. At the same time, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Boromir continue battling the enemy with everything they have. Elsewhere, Merry and Pippin are surrounded by the enemy army. Boromir rushes to protect the two young hobbits, fighting bravely against overwhelming numbers. During the battle, the enemy commander repeatedly shoots Boromir with arrows. Even after being struck several times, Boromir refuses to give up and continues fighting with extraordinary courage until the very end. Although Boromir manages to defeat many enemies, Merry and Pippin are eventually captured and carried away by the enemy forces. The enemy commander prepares to finish Boromir once and for all. At that very moment, Aragorn arrives and attacks the enemy leader, preventing him from delivering the final blow. An intense duel begins between Aragorn and the commander of the enemy army. After a long and brutal fight, Aragorn finally gains the upper hand and kills the commander by beheading him with his sword. Shortly afterward, Aragorn returns to Boromir's side. Knowing that he is dying, Boromir expresses his deep regret for trying to take the ring from Frodo and pledges his loyalty to Aragorn. Before taking his final breath, he acknowledges Aragorn as the true king of Gondor and entrusts him with the future of his people. Boromir then dies peacefully in Aragorn's arms, bringing a heartbreaking end to one of the Fellowship's bravest warriors. In the film's final moments, Frodo and Sam are seen traveling together in a small boat as they continue their dangerous journey toward Mordor. Meanwhile, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli decide to pursue the enemy in order to rescue Merry and Pippin from captivity. As Frodo and Sam continue moving forward, they leave the safety of civilization behind and head toward the dark land of Mordor, where towering mountains, deadly landscapes, and unimaginable dangers await them on the next stage of their journey.